Alrighty, welcome everybody to the Awaken series of lectures that I have been putting together over the last few weeks. I'm very excited here to be sharing what I guess is sort of like a distillation of my thoughts over decades of work and how I believe that one can most efficiently, without a lot of kind of ritual or fluff, proceed to actually going to this state that we call sort of awakening of the mind, which different religious traditions have their own sort of words for it. The higher self, one with the universe, enlightenment, moksha, whatever you want to call it, sort of basically how to go through, a set of exercises that will deliver us a sort of a transcendence of mind. So we're going to go through that over a period of 5 weeks. And I have been hard at work trying to put my thoughts together on a presentation. So I'm going to do that. Now, just so that you've got something slightly different to look at rather than just me talking all the time. If you want to do that, you can come on Sundays. So let's hope this works. I'm going to share. Does anyone have any questions before we begin though? No. All right. So I'm happy to just, I'll keep you on the screen, and I'm happy that if you have any questions, just put your hand up, or there's a little hand button too, and I'm happy to sort of stop at any time as we go through, and I'll try to leave time. I'm aiming to finish in an hour, and then I've said to you, be prepared to stay for an hour and a half, so we've sort of got 30 minutes for questions at the end. Now, can everyone see my screen? And you should see a presentation about to start called The Awakening Journey. Yep, good stuff. All right, so this is the official welcome. I wonder what I can do with this. Yeah, so welcome. This is really the awakening journey. I'll give you a little bit of a detail about me. Most of you know me quite well, so I'll be brief. So rather than give you too much of an autobiography in terms of, I did this and then I did that and then I did this, I thought it would be fun to instead give you a biography of some of the major insights, I guess, that have stayed with me along the way that really form the foundation of this course. From quite a young age, I really was not that impressed with the leaders of the world, those people that we put on pedestals and that we put in high esteem. So I was born into a bit of an atheist family, really, but very, very kind of middle class Australian, as average as you can get. And initially, as an engineer, for example, I would look up to the people who ran these companies and, you know, orchestrated thousands of people and earned lots of money, and there are various politicians and superstars. But wherever I would look, there would be, the people that we look up to had their own faults, Stars would be caught doing bad things or even being depressed and committing suicide. Politicians were always in the trouble. And the same with, even when I got into business, I thought, oh, well, at least the people who run these companies are people to look up to. And even there, I wasn't impressed. And so right from a young age, I really had this question mark over, does wealth, status, power, and all the trappings of materialistic lifestyle, does that equal happiness And I think fairly early on, I concluded, no, it doesn't. So I was very interested in religion, but I was kind of atheist. So that was quite interesting, a juxtaposition. But I was fascinated, and I wanted to learn as much as I could. And I began learning in Australia. I know my mum did yoga and then went into Tai Chi and then some TM meditation. So even as a teenager, I was kind of learning from there and thought it was pretty cool to do this meditation thing. And I'd heard stories of yogis being able to levitate, and that fascinated me. So I became interested, and I did a lot of meditation myself. And through that journey, I had the fortune to have some really incredible experiences in my meditation. And I think the outcome of that is I really decided, yes, happiness can come from within. Buddhism will say all happiness comes from within, but certainly there's no doubt about it that if you can literally sit on your bum and concentrate on your nose and actually have incredible feelings of happiness and peace come up, it must be coming from inside. So that was an epiphany to me that again, it reinforced this idea you don't have to go out and search for happiness and wealth out there. You can have, there's oodles of it in here. You just have to know how to access it. And then the question, of course, is how do I access it on a constant, regular basis? And that led me to a further search. I practiced all the different religions. I practiced, you know, Sufism, Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, um, Jainism. I was fascinated in them all. I resonated more than anything towards the Buddhist tradition, but I'm still believe there's a lot of gold in all the different traditions. I also went into science because I'm more of a scientific mind and I want to know how these things work. And I happened upon NLP. And I think NLP, more than anything, taught me that our mind is a bunch of patterns. That's all we really are, is habitual patterns of mind. And these patterns are what cause us the stresses in life. But all patterns were learned at some point and can be unlearned uh, at a different time if they don't serve us. And so NLP is about unlearning patterns that maybe don't help us. And so that really, in a nutshell, are the sort of big epiphanies that I've had and form the basis of how do we seek awakening through uh, undoing the patterns which cause us these mental problems. So some of the beliefs that I came across along the way, and I've shared these beliefs with some people. I know I shared them on the Bali retreat, for example, that uh, when we access these states of happiness inside of us, what we're doing with our mind is we're simply resting them in a state of really very little conceptualization. And so that gives me the belief that our natural state is a state of happiness and peace. And so we don't actually have to get it. Again, we don't have to get it from outside, and we don't actually have to create it in ourselves. We've just got to stop. We've got to stop doing things. We don't have to create things. It's there all along. And again, this is reinforced by all the spiritual traditions, as far as I can see. And one of the things is that uh, repression doesn't work. So one of the things that we do when we have negative thought patterns is we repress them. And avoidance doesn't work. Instead, we need to face our fears, face our negative emotions, and that really leads to growth in having a skillful mind. The other big epiphany for me, actually, which didn't happen that long ago, now we're talking sort of 6 or 7 years ago, maybe, is up until that stage, I had been laboring at my spiritual practice with the idea that one day, bang, I would suddenly become awakened. There's this flash of lightning and I would become awakened. And there are people who have these stories of something similar to that. And certainly we can make big strides. But talking to many, many awakened people, I found out that it is actually more common, whether these days or not, I'm not sure, but definitely these days and probably throughout history, that awakening is not some sudden event, although there can be sharp jumps at certain times. Awakening is a process. And so it unfolds gradually. And I think it's very achievable for people to really get to the first stage of awakening reasonably easily. It's because the trouble with this idea that there's full awakening, I mean, there's people who say only the Buddha was fully awakened. So one person in the millions and millions of years was awakened. And that's kind of like a bit depressing because it's like, well, what chance have I got? But I don't believe that's the case anymore. So, Buddy, what do you have a question?
Yeah, Peter, I just wanted to ask, just when you refer to awakening as such and, people who have been awakened, do you mind just explain a little bit what you mean by awakened, just at the start?
Yeah, so I'll probably get into it more later. Um, but awakening, well, the Buddha said one thing: I teach suffering and the end of suffering. He says that's the only thing I teach. And so awakening really is what is considered the end of suffering. And 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 it's the realization that suffering comes from the mind, and it's the ability to control your mind such that those patterns that cause suffering don't arise anymore. But the first few stages of awakening, there's a massive decrease in suffering, although the mind still throws up. Um, it's a long journey, I would say, to get rid of all mind related suffering. But there's, even in the early stages, there can be very big strides you can make into having a happy mind through seeing, uh, some of the illusions that we currently labor under. Um, and so those are the first stages of awakening. But I'll get into perhaps what is awakening also a little bit later. Um, because I'm in my next slide, I want to show you that I really teach this journey from suffering to happiness. But first of all, I'll just finish here. So, yeah, well, the awakening is not as hard as you think. Is the next is the lead on to this, especially the initial stages. But nevertheless, it's not easy either. It does take work and it takes persistence. And it really takes a kind of dogged determination. Like it really, for me, it's almost like I'm really going to do this. Like it needs to be a high priority in your life. So I have a family and kids, and they are high priorities for me. I have my business, Skillful Mind, and that is also a high priority. But I would say that in general, it's not even as high as my own spiritual practice. So my spiritual practice is pretty high, and I think that from what I can tell, there are people who just seem to awaken for no reason at all, with not much effort at all. But the great majority of people, it's pretty high on their agenda and they put a lot of effort into it. So, um, yeah, so it needs to be a high priority. That doesn't mean you need to meditate 12 hours a day. There's plenty of people who make great progress on just 45 minutes a day. But it's a high priority. So they're looking at trying not to get into negative states, throughout the whole day. And and there are certain conditions which can definitely speed up your journey, which is the whole reason of this lecture, is what are the ideal connections that I humbly believe, not to say that's right, but this is what I believe, to be those conditions which will speed one's journey towards awakening. So we're going to be looking at that. And as I said, in essence, I shared this slide like this on retreat, that if our natural state is one of peace, and our journey, but we experience suffering, our suffering, the journey that we're taking is simply a state which we're not happy in at the moment, which is discontentment, towards a state of peace. And if mind patterns create the suffering, then nirvana is simply letting go of all those patterns. And then, interestingly enough, we get back to that state of peace and happiness that was our birthright and was there all along. But we just kind of covered it up with mental formations. Yeah, so that's the essence that we're doing. Now, I thought I'll put this slide quite up front. So a lot of what I talk about, I'm going to give you the big picture first, and then we're going to sink in. And interestingly enough, even though I say that we're suffering at the moment, we have all these neuroses and things like that. Of course, that's not true all of the time. It's more like up and down. There's definitely times in our life when we are very happy and very peaceful. And then there's other times when really everything's going wrong and we are just out of our minds with stress. And we're like, I don't know if I can handle this. Certainly you meet a lot of people like that. And so the two pathways to awakening are actually to recognize when you are closer to that state of peace and happiness and sink into it. That is a big part of the journey. And I suppose, really, in a way, meditation is primarily concerned with that, is to artificially create a state where you're more peaceful and then to just sink into that as much as possible so that the mind gets used to that state of peace and then hopefully says, I like this state. I want to be here more. And the more you can sort of sink into it and get the unconscious mind to cotton on to the fact that this is a nice state to be, it'll actually help you, it'll help the unconscious mind look for ways to get back to that state. And then, of course, they are disrupted by our patterns. Someone bugs us, someone pushes our buttons, and we suddenly fall into a state of negativity. And so the second one is to get rid of those patterns. Now, I've got the word purification here. It's used by a lot of traditions, but I kind of don't, or in the way I mean it, it's not some sort of sanctimonious, thing. It could be, and that's sort of part of it, but it's a much more practical way of just saying, get rid of those patterns. And so, one way to look at those patterns is they're obscurations in the mind, they're rumples in the mind, and we've just got to smooth it out so that the mind sees a more healthy way to look at your problems in life, because life is always going to have problems. It's your attitude towards them that are the key to you being at peace with whatever life throws at you. So, yeah, so thinking in approach involves, directly experiencing the mind's neutral state and allowing it to rest in that clarity. Practices like Dzogchen, Zen, non-dual meditation, or are all sort of practices of sinking in. Whereas purification is more using the mind to get rid of those beliefs which don't serve us. So from a meditation point of view, Vipassana, analytical meditation, also NLP and cognitive approaches. So that's sort of a big umbrella thing of the way we teach. But in this particular, to then sort of break those two paths down even further, I've broken it down into 3 foundations and 5 principles. So today I want to go through the 3 foundations and the first principle, a first key, sorry, and each week we'll go through 1 key at a time. The first is what you need as a basis, without which I don't think progress will be made. If so, it'll be very slow. And then the 5 keys are ones which will accelerate your growth towards enlightenment. And the 3 foundations that we're going to go through today are the importance of a mentor, of good teachings, and of a community to support you. And then the 5 keys which we're going to go through every week. The first today, we're going to talk about meditation, which you know that I do a lot of and teach a lot. Next week, coaching. The third week, I want to talk about what is fundamental well-being and what is awakening. And I talk about a study which interviewed basically over 1,000 awakened people from all different traditions and tried to come up with, well, what is the key aspects of this awakening journey across traditions, like not just in one tradition. And then we'll talk about the sort of wisdom, what we call insight. What are the key understandings that trigger an awakening experience? That'll be in the 4th week. And then in the 5th week, I want to cover loving kindness meditations, which are an indispensable and very powerful way to also awaken the mind. And then I'll sum it up. So that's an overview of what we're going to be doing through the 5 weeks. All right, so the first important aspect. Now I draw on Buddhism here. So on Buddhism, they have what's called the triple gem, the 3 gems. And each one of these gems, they say, is more precious than a wish-fulfilling gem. Because in Tibet, apparently, if you're very lucky, you can find a gem that grants your wishes. But even more precious than that is these 3 gems. So that's where it comes from. And no matter where I look in whatever tradition, but also when I've been in mentoring circles and, psychology and things like that, these 3 things come up again and again. So it's really important that without these 3, I don't think any real significant progress can be made. And the first of those is, of course, a mentor. You do need a teacher. First of all, for inspiration, if you're going to go somewhere, like, in terms of qualities, you want someone that will embody those qualities. I'm just going to mute Mona. In order to sort of model them, to sort of emulate someone who has those qualities. The second is for the transmission itself. A teacher is there to give you the transmission and give you their knowledge and effectively communicate them, not only with the sort of lineage teachings, like the official teachings, but also I think teachings that come from personal experience are far more powerful. If a teacher says, well, I had that issue the same as you, and this is how I personally overcome this particular issue, it's just so much more powerful than saying, well, this is what the holy book says. And it's important that you find a mentor that you resonate with. So some teachers might be really, really good teachers, but you just do not really resonate with their teaching style. And I think that's really important. I would say that a teacher that you resonate with, even if they're not as famous and even maybe not as learned as someone else, is you'll still learn more from them because you resonate with them. You sort of understand the way they think more so than perhaps another teacher that will be more famous. So I think there's some of the qualities that one should look for in a teacher. Now, I'll also say at this point in time that it's very, very common. Well, often teachers are human too. Okay. Very rarely do you get, very rarely, I will say, does a fully enlightened Buddha, come along. And who knows, maybe even the Buddha wasn't perfect either. But certainly, there are people who fall sort of head over heels in devotion for a certain particular guru. And then one day they're caught doing something naughty and their whole world caves in. Um, and I've really taken the view that people are just human. And if someone does something wrong, some of the teachers that I think are just amazing do have some controversial aspects about them. But I don't think that they're any less amazing just because they're not 100% perfect. So I sort of feel that if people are looking for the perfect teacher, um, we might be cutting ourselves off. I'm certainly not perfect. Um, I say that right up front. I have many ways in which I'm not perfect, but I don't even try to. I don't really try to be perfect. I just try to be the best I can be, and then so be it. But I do feel that it's a mistake for anyone to try to look for the perfect teacher. Nevertheless, we do want a teacher who ideally kind of clearly is a couple of steps ahead, at least a couple of steps ahead of us on the path, so that we're following someone that we trust is can guide us. Because if they're not ahead of us, how can they really guide us properly? So that's really important. Okay, the next one is the teachings. Again, there are just so many teachings out there, and sometimes I say, oh yeah, all teachings are good. You never know where you're going to find the next um, nugget of gold, and we should be open from teachings um, from all different walks of life and places. And I'm very open minded about where I learn. But at the same time, there's some pretty not very good teachings out there. And
Mm.
there are people that are quite frankly misled for years and years at a time. And I think that you know it's it is a it is should be upon us to really determine which are the best, which are the good teachings to find out. Now that's easier said than done.
Mhm.
Um, so a few things that I've put here is, first of all, there should be an initial resonance with the teachings. That is true. Sometimes you you listen to them and you just feel, there's something right about that. Okay. So people can get, one has to be careful because that's not the only thing. We have to also be aware that, yes, just because I resonate with them today doesn't mean that somehow I've got it wrong, because there's certainly those people that are caught in these sects will swear black and blue that, it's the best way. And then years later, they find that they've, been taken advantage of and blah, 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 blah. So, but nevertheless, there is something about the teachings which I feel there's a deep resonance. Like, yeah, that just seems absolutely spot on and correct. Um, Often they are demanding yet possible, so they often require some sort of effort from us. The teachings often are not easy. People who are looking for a quick way out, good luck if you find an easy way to do this. Personally, I've just come to the conclusion that a lot of this stuff just takes hard work. If you're going to confront one of your demons that's been with you for a long time, that's not an easy thing to do. And you've really just got to be firm and resolute and just be adamant that you're going to do the work that needs to confront whatever demons you have to confront, and the practice to train the mind. But it should sound doable. The teachings seem to be true time and time again. So sometimes I'll listen to a truth that I heard 10 years ago, and I'll say to myself, oh, I heard that 10 years ago, but it's just as true now as it always have been. And in fact, often it's even more true. It's like I can really see the truth in that over that, even more so than I did a long time ago. And finally, you have to make progress. So, with meditation, if you've been meditating for 5 years and you're still not any better than you were 5 years ago, you've got to question your teachings. If you're doing some sort of mind transformation, and you're still as triggered as you were 2 or 3 years ago, you've got to question, is it really working? And I know so many people have trusts in certain processes and teachers, and I'm not going to name them, but I know I could name several where people, they just haven't made any change in years. And yet they still feel that if they just keep going at this process, they'll make change. So it's gotta work. Like, I'm an engineer, I'm practical. Look, these things have just if they don't work, you got to give them some time. But if they're not working after a certain amount of time, you got to start looking for a different place. So, trustworthy teachings. And the final gem, the final triple gem, is a community. There's a famous quote by Jim Rohn: "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And again, this is so true. You can have you can have a really good teacher, and you can have great teachings, and I guess you will make progress, but it will be so much more accelerated if you have a if you surround yourself with like-minded people that are on the same journey as you. And it's so difficult to try to enact your own personal growth when there's other people in your life that are kind of trying to pull you the other direction, either tear you down or distract you by convincing you to, come out to the bar, or, come here or come there or whatever. So in Buddhism, the communities is called a Sangha. So Sangha is a group of like-minded people, and there's a shared commitment to practice. They give you accountability. So accountability is a big part of making progress. Are there people here that will hold you up to what you've promised yourself? Not in a negative way, but just in a supportive way. The questions, and I've said to you, please raise your hand and ask questions, because I find that when people in the group ask clarifying questions, that's sometimes where the real gems of learning come from, when we delve into a person's questions. So diverse perspectives that can enrich the understanding, so looking at things from different things. And most important of all, a Sangha should be there to help each other. And I feel that if you're a student, then it's your role as much as anyone's to help the other people. So, I'm the teacher, obviously, I take on that role as well, but I feel like we've all got to look out for each other. And if you think you can help somebody, one should sort of step up and help the other people in the group. And that is beneficial, obviously, for the group members, but it's also beneficial for you being able to step up and do that. It's amazingly helpful if students step up to try to help another member of the group. So, yeah, so that is, they are the foundations upon which all the other keys revolve. So, any questions on what I call the triple gem, or what in Buddhism is called the triple gem? Great. Well, we shall soldier on. So now we're going to turn to meditation. And like, I could spend, and I do spend, literally years teaching people how to meditate. Okay. So obviously, this is not a small subject. Um, and, you just can't do it justice in really any amount of time, a short amount of time like this. It is the cornerstone of all spiritual practices, even in traditions that don't officially meditate. They pray. Well, prayer is a kind of a type of meditation. So, meditation is at the core of most of all decent traditions, because in meditation, where we are actively trying to get back to that state of before thought. And it is thought is, it's the conceptual mind that is the cause of all our worries and all our concerns and anxieties and things like that. And so it has to be the effort to try to go back to a place before that has to be instrumental in any form of spiritual progress. But in the world, there is a rich tapestry of meditation practices. So there's, you know, mindfulness meditation, Vipassana meditation, Zen meditation, Theravada meditation, loving kindness meditation. There's chanting and mantra meditation, there's guided visualizations, there's so many, many, many. Um, it is a very, very confusing thing. And so my life has been consumed towards understanding what is meditation, what is the core of meditation. And one of the things, of course, is that in the different traditions that I've learned, and I've learned Sufism, I've learned a bit of Jainism, I've learned Theravadan Buddhism, and I've learned Tibetan Tantric Buddhism. All of these different traditions have traditions and rituals and frameworks and things like this, which support and surround the core teachings. And again, lots of people can miss the forest. Was it miss the trees for the forest or whatever it is? They get caught up in the practices and the traditions and the visualizations and the prayers and saying the prayers right and things like that. And they lose track of what is the core. So, yeah. And so my goal is to strip away all of these trappings and ritualistic elements and find, what is it that transformed people above and beyond all the superfluous stuff. Now, I say superfluous, I don't mean it in any sort of derogatory way. A lot of these traditions have really beautiful practices and they can support the main practice. Um, so I do, as you guys know, I do have meditations, and every week I'll say, oh, let's do an American Indian meditation. This one's really beautiful. Okay, let's worship the spirits. And then the next meditation I'll say, well, spirits are all in the mind. Let's just, you know what I mean? So um, they certainly have their uses and they can be really beautiful and useful, but it is good to just understand, yeah, but what is the core that runs through all different traditions, which is the real transformative element? And so, yeah, so that is the meditation. Now, the a teaching which resonated to me must be probably 20 years ago now, maybe not, maybe 15 years ago, 15 to 20 years ago, was given to me by Lama Chodek Rinpoche, a teacher of mine in Canberra. He's a Tibetan teacher. And he gave us a teaching on the 9 stages of meditation by Asanga. Now, Asanga was an Indian saint that lived 500 years ago. And he said that up until then, the foundation, the way meditation has been taught was through the Four Foundations as taught by the Buddha, which is also a great framework. But he broke the path down, or the meditation journey down, into 9 stages. Um, and I've loved those 9 stages for years and years and years. And I was like, if only someone could write a book in modern language using modern examples that kind of followed those 9 stages, but brought to bear some of the things that we learn in NLP. And I planned this book for years and never did anything about it. And then one day I saw a link to a book called The Mind Illuminated by an author called Chuladasa. And it was just exactly what I would have wanted to write, but 1,000 times better. So for me, I've shared it with you, all you guys. I feel it's like the best book that's ever been written on meditation. One of the best books in the world. So I want to go through quickly those 10 stages. Today with you as well. Any questions though before we begin? And I'm going to try and do it in 15 minutes. So some of you already know that in a way this is a precursor, possibly a precursor to the mentor program that I do. And I'm very, very keen to take people on a journey over years rather than just weeks. And this is certainly one of the books that we study in depth in that mentor program. So it's called The Mind Illuminated. This is a cover. There's another cover as well. And this is Chuladasa, who passed away about a year and a half ago now. So very unfortunate, but he's left behind a great legacy with this book, The Mind Illuminated. And the stages are broken down into ones that we can follow fairly easily and are very recognizable and have clear descriptions on how to get from one stage to the next stage. So it makes the journey so much more doable. So rather than just doing one practice and just keeping it up for years and years and years at a time, hoping that one day everything will just go bang, you can identify where you're at from a complete beginner to an adept meditator, and you can look at particular practices which help exactly where you're at. Now, again, this is really what I think is the core of the meditation practice, but it can be supported by so much more. And there are other definitely very important meditation practices which are not in this book, which are incredibly useful and supportive, like, for example, loving kindness meditations, insight meditations, mantra meditations, all of that. But to understand the essence of meditation, of how to get to a still mind, is instrumental in making progress in any of those other meditations as well. And that's what this book does so beautifully. So stage 1 is really establishing our practice. I must say, of course, that Chuladasa added a stage. And it's not as clear cut, but let's say, for the sake of generalization, that he added a stage at the beginning, with the idea that a Sangha really wrote his treaty or his book for people who were already in monasteries, for monks who are actually meditating. And so Chuladasa has added a stage for the complete beginner, the layman, who needs to actually establish a practice. And that's what stage 1 is, establishing a practice. And it's now, how do we get from a routine of not doing any meditation to a routine of doing a meditation every day? Because for any sort of progress, we need to first of all establish a habit of doing it regularly. If we only do it ad hoc, then meditation is going to have limited benefits at best. But if we can keep it up on a regular basis, i.e. daily, then we can build upon the previous days. So we need to establish a basis, and he talks about in stage one the 6-point preparation, where we go through things like what's our goal, what's our motivation, what should be our body posture, what things could disturb us, what are our expectations, for example. So it's about preparing the mind from a viewpoint perspective to have a good meditation. And he also goes through the 4 steps, I think it's called. 6-point preparation and 4-step transition, in how to sort of transition from a busy life to transitioning into a meditative sort of state. And he talks about things that are going to obscure us from sitting daily. So stage 1, they say that we create mastery once we're actually sitting every day. That's all we need to do, is to be able to sit even just for 5 or 10 minutes a day to achieve stage 1. So that should hopefully be not too hard to master, and we can say, okay, tick, we've got 10% of the journey done just there. Maybe not 10%, but we've got stage 1. Now, stage 2 is interrupted continuity of attention. And when beginners start meditation, they quickly notice that they spend more time thinking than they do actually on the meditation object. So we have long periods of mind wandering and only short stints on the breath, which, for the sake of argument, we use the breath as the meditation object, but it could be anything. We can do a meditation on body, on sound, or whatever. But often breath is considered one of the best meditation objects, so we use that. And the skill is to develop introspective awareness and to catch mind wandering sooner, and then re-engage with the breath. Now, right from the outset, another big lesson for me was the importance of enjoyment in your meditation. And I've been a bit of a sucker for being quite sort of I say masochistic almost in my meditation, really taking this attitude of just sitting there no matter what, no matter how hard things get. A strong determination. I've got good strong determination, but actually that hasn't helped, didn't help. And it wasn't until I really started thinking, right, I've got to actually cultivate joy in my meditation, that my meditation actually began to progress. And so Tuladasa talks about this right at the beginning from stage 2, is when you notice that your mind has done something right, you've got to positively reinforce that by being happy and going, yes, well done, mind. You did such a great thing. And that positive reinforcement is a stronger encouragement to stay on the breath than telling it off. So if you're training little kids, or if you're even training animals, if you're training anything, positive reinforcement is considered better than negative, telling people off when they do things wrong. So it's no different to our mind. Yes, Buddy.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I totally agree with in terms of, they talk about the habit loop, in terms of, I don't know, from my experience, in order to make it it's so hard at the start to try and make it a habit to do it. But then when you start to see those small rewards and that positive reinforcement, it just becomes so much easier to keep to doing it, to keep the habit going. So yeah, having that positive reinforcement is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's stage 2. Stage 3, let me just get rid of this. Stage 3 is extended continuity of attention. So already at stage 3, if we do this enough, then just by simply celebrating our small wins, the mind will get used to staying on the breath, and we will start extending the continuity of our attention. Um, and so when we start extending the continuity of attention, and we're not forgetting all the time. So the process is we are on the meditation object, we get a subtle distraction, then we forget what we're supposed to be meditating on our breath, and then the mind starts mind wandering. So it goes subtle distraction, forgetting, mind wandering, which, yeah, so like that. And at stage two, we're just mind wandering all the time. So we need to reinforce positively when we're doing the right thing, which is staying with the meditation object. Now, we forget very, very quickly in stage three, but as we extend the continuity of attention, then we can start to see these forgetting moments. They don't happen very often, so we can look for them. So we might be meditating for a good 3 to 4, 5 minutes, and we can go, right now, I'm going to look at how forgetting happens. And so we're looking into when the mind starts to lose the meditation object. So again, the skill is to notice how the wandering starts. And as we get more used to seeing how the mind starts to wander, we can start to be more aware of it and look out for it, and potentially and hopefully either catch it soon after it's happened, or even better, before it begins or just as it's about to begin. And so stage three is working with forgetting. Um, and by the end of stage three, we're so used to seeing forgetting that most of the time we can pick it up. So in stage four, there's not much mind wandering anymore. We're getting used to this, how the mind begins to wander, and we're able to catch it. So our awareness is growing. Now, we are still getting strong distractions. The other thing that we're starting to get in stage four is dullness. So some people never get dull, or very rarely get dull. Yeah, so Deb's on the call. She's black, but she very rarely gets dull. And other people have big problems with dullness. They fall asleep a lot. Both of these are obstacles, and both of them have different ways to overcome. But in stage four, we're working with that. So gross distraction and gross dullness, both of which will make seeing forgetting very, very difficult, and therefore lead to mind wandering. So you can see that in this process, it goes from here to here to here to here to here, and we're kind of working backwards. We're trying to find what's the cause of that, like work on that, what's the cause of that, work on that. So at the end of so that's stage three. Stage four, sorry, is to find a balance between distraction, which is an over-energized mind, and dullness, which is an under-energized mind. So it's keeping that energy level right. And getting into this habitual introspective awareness. It's good once you get into stage four of trying to practice awareness 24 hours a day, to trying to be aware of your mind the whole time, what we call presence. So be in presence. What's my mind doing at the moment? Is it dull or is it distracted? Is it concentrated, etc.? Yeah, and we get, at this point, our concentration is improving. Some people get visions or insights. We get these epiphanies, not necessarily about meditation practice, but sometimes we go have this great idea at work. Oh, and then you can't meditate because you've suddenly got this really, really good idea that you want to act on in your life. So anyway, we're going to work with all of those things. But by the end of stage four, we're getting rid of gross distraction and gross dullness, and we're starting to work with what we call subtle distractions. Subtle distractions. So in stage five, The challenge is to overcome subtle distractions. Um, and we are getting quite calm at this stage because the level of calmness has much more to do with what you're thinking about rather than the quantity of thoughts. So, for example, I give the example of someone playing chess or maybe even a sports person like a race car driver. Their minds can be going at a million miles an hour, but if they're not, if their mind is just on what they're doing, then they will remain in flow and in calm. So, if, say, for example, you think about the ocean, that's maybe a very calming object of meditation. You can think lots about the ocean, and as long as you don't get onto a subject which is triggers your buttons, you'll stay calm. So we are finding calmness because we're just concentrating on the breath, and the breath is not an object which causes us attachment or aversion. So challenge, we're working with subtle dullness, which reduces vividness. This is stage 5 is sometimes considered a trap because people can get into these levels of subtle dullness and stay there for hours and come out of it and go, wow, I had a great meditation. And then you say, well, what happened? You say, oh, I can't remember. It's just so good. And basically they've gone into this state of subtle dullness. So now they didn't actually fall asleep, but it's a little bit similar to that. And so we need to increase our vividness of our objects so that there's higher energy level. And we want what's called meta awareness. So stage 5, we start to step back from the mind. It feels like you're stepping back from the mind and you're watching the mind as the mind watches the meditation object. There's a line from Chuladasa as the sort of the experience. So it's like you've got this, yeah, it's like awareness is no longer part of your thoughts. It's something which you can then step into awareness and look at your thoughts rather than feeling like, well, I am thinking. It's like I'm not thinking, I'm watching, and there's something over there that's doing the thinking. So that's the kind of feeling that we get into in stage 5. Stage 6 is subduing subtle distractions. So here we are calming the foundation more, and we're working with subtle distractions and getting rid of all self-talk, even getting rid of thinking. And we can go into periods of what we call exclusive focus, it means staying on one object for longer periods of time. This is sometimes where you will start to get weird body sensations because there's if the mind is not occupied by things out there, it throws up things within. Now, the example that I used in the discussion the other day was if you go into some sort of sensory deprivation experience, like say you go into a black cave and you stay there for like 24 hours, eventually you will start seeing things. Okay, I saw a documentary the other day where a person went into a completely soundproof room and there was no noise whatsoever. And after a few hours, he was hearing voices. So, all of us, once we have sensory deprivation, the brain will start throwing up things. And so, this can cause a lot of disturbances in the mind formation, and people will maybe they'll start to see angels or they'll hear voices and they might be scary or they might not. So anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time on there. But now stage 7 is really where the pacification and the purification of the mind really starts to take on. It's happening all the time. A lot happens at stage 4, but again, there's an acceleration at stage 7 where we're moving towards single pointed meditation. And because of this, negativities which you've buried and thought you dealt with start to come up. In NLP, we talk about past traumas coming up and all of that. Well, very deep seated stuff comes up, including, for example, how you actually see reality. Because at this point, we can start to have insight experiences And like, for example, we see the momentariness of mind, and that will throw up big question marks around how you perceive the world, because your mind will be so sharp, it'll see reality and it'll see it in a different light to what you've believed that you've thought you've seen the rest of your life. And this can be very disconcerting to a lot of people, because you're seeing reality as it truly is, not as we illusory, you know, have made it up to be, what we think it is. We're also going to complete effortlessness here. So in stage 7, we're so used to creating effort, that effort then becomes a problem in our meditation practice, and we need to let go of effort, which leads us to stage 8, the compliant mind and pacifying the senses. At this stage, things get very pleasant indeed. The difficult experiences and visions go away, and you experience deeper states of tranquility, bliss, and rapture. And as the senses get pacified, they all become completely blissful and beautiful, and things smell good and taste good and look good and everything like that. Stage 9 is physical and mental pliancy. It's a state of advanced meditation, which I won't go into, strong joy and pleasure. And at this stage, there's nothing left to do except allow the mind to fully become tranquil, leading to stage 10, where the mind is so used to being tranquil that it actually persists outside of all meditation practices. So at this point, even when you stop meditating, the mind just remains tranquil and peaceful all the time. And once you get to stage 7, the likelihood of insight experiences grows exponentially. You can have an insight experience at any time. Even right now, you could just suddenly have an insight experience. There's nothing stopping you, but the chances are very, very low. But as you develop through the 10 stages of meditation, the probability of you having insight experiences increases dramatically. And it's almost unthinkable that by the time you get to stage 10, you will definitely have had a lot of deep insight experiences, which, if shared in conjunction with a teacher that knows what they're talking about, will awaken the mind. So that's why meditation is a cornerstone, because it is a surefire method to get to these states, which are called the awakening of mind. And that is the end of my presentation. So that's for day 1. So thank you for listening, and I'm more than happy to have a chat or answer any questions that you guys might have. And I'll go back to screen. Yes, Buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. That was yeah, fascinating, the 10 steps, especially. Yeah, my question is, from your experience, Peter, having studied the different various traditions, do you find that those those 10 steps are apply to all traditions in terms of what they're
Uh,
trying to achieve?
well, that's a good question. Like, I think that insight can occur in many traditions. And for example, it can occur in Christianity, but Christianity really take, doesn't do meditation. So they do other practices. Same with Sufism. They tend to use a lot of metta and loving kindness in Sufism. And so it's really only Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism. And in those traditions, I would say yes, that when you're practicing meditation, the good thing about these 10 steps is that most practitioners will experience these stages. They are very common across the board. And that's why this is good, because in addition to these 10 steps, each of you will have lots of other stuff happen. but that will be individualistic to you. It won't necessarily be across the board. What happens to Kylie may be different to what happens to Doug. But these 10 stages have been shown over and over again to be common among all people who follow the meditative practice, whether that practice is in at least those Buddhist, Hindu, Jainism type practices. There are those traditions that do practice meditation. So
But
short
but but
answer
did,
is
but did we not say, Peter, that all religions in some sense do some meditation, like even Christianity?
well, Christianity doesn't really do it to this stage, and they don't do it in such. I mean, they do it through prayer and trying to be one with God. Yeah, and that's my understanding. And they are kind of practicing some of the same practices of trying to become one with what they believe God is, and therefore trying to forget about the unconceptual, the conceptual mind. And what I believe happens is they then accidentally discover that there's some sort of presence which is not the conceptual mind, and they call it God.
Mm.
And we can call it God too, because it doesn't actually matter what it's called. Maybe maybe that's a great description for it, but different traditions call it different things. But it is separate from the thinking mind. And I read between the lines, and if you read like St. Francis of Assisi and some of those more less conventional Christians, nevertheless famous, a lot of their descriptions represent sort of more of that awakening journey, which I'll talk about at another time, but not necessarily, they don't, to get up to stage 8, 9, and 10, I think you really do have to have a good meditation teacher that knows what they're talking about and do it in the proper way. And I doubt that other traditions who don't have that teaching would get up to these stages, so they wouldn't experience these particular things. But like I said, you don't have to get to level 10 to awaken. You can do it in other ways. You can do it in other ways, which I'll be talking about in future weeks. Nigel.
Thanks.
Just to say, first of all, thank you very much. Very interesting. Research going on, very, very interesting. It's also helped me with my transcendental meditation to look inside it more. You've given me a way of getting insight and clarity. I was thinking in particular about the mentor. I follow a lot of the sayings and teachings of Sadhguru, but I wouldn't class him as he's not a mentor I can liaise with like a mentor that you're suggesting. Is he? He's more of a general, the truth to say, more of a general sort of mentor rather than you can liaise with.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong. I have lots of teachers, so you don't, in fact, I would say that it's much better to have lots of teachers rather than one teacher, and you listen to those teachers, and if one teacher is saying one thing and one teacher is saying the other thing, that's a good opportunity for you to go like, well, I need more clarity here. Like, which is right, or am I not understanding them? Are they saying the same thing, but I'm hearing different things? So uh, I have all of these teachers, that some of them are people like Shinzen, who I'm really never going to speak to, who I like, but I read his books. Others are like Lama Chodak Rinpoche, who I might see nowadays only once every couple of years or whatever. And then there's other people who I'm close to, like, there's sort of a friend of mine, Eric, who I can pretty much, I used to see him once a week and I now see him not that often. Um, so, yeah, we want teachers that are approachable. That's another aspect of a teacher which is quite important. to have at least one or two teachers that are very, very approachable. So you can ask them direct questions yourself. But yeah, I'm certainly, when I say a guru, I don't necessarily think it's really a good thing to be so worshipping of a single person and kind of put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly didn't do that.
I thought your slides were terrific.
Great.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, very professional looking. I'm going to assume it was all you and not AI.
Yeah, well, it's a combination. It is. I mean, I'll be honest. It is so amazing. I just wrote. So
It
I
is
love
incredible.
mind maps, as some
Yes,
you may or may
yes.
not know. So I
Yes.
download everything into a mind map, and yeah, basically I just uploaded the mind map, and it makes the outline of the presentation, and then I just go in and adjust it to the way I want. So
It's amazing.
yeah, it is amazing. It's just so the amount of work that would go into making it look like this, anyway. Thank you very much. I've already got the presentations for next week and the week after already done, so
good.
Yeah.
Is it, can we go back to Buddy's question earlier about so what does an awakened mind or experience, like, what are the features of that? It's like I can follow everything as to where this is the journey, but I'm still not quite sure.
Well, first of all, there's a realization that the conceptual mind is not you. And
Okay.
the way I see it is you can see the conceptual mind as a part of you that is a useful part, just as this hand is a part of me.
Useful part.
It's very useful. It can pick up my cup of tea and it can help me have a drink. But I can put that hand down, okay? The difference with the conceptual mind is somewhere along the line, we got confused with the conceptual mind being a tool and began to come to this idea that the conceptual mind is us.
Okay.
And the problem with the conceptual mind is it works on what it's driven by is wanting, what's called craving. So the mind thinks about what do I want and how do I get rid of the things I don't want. And implicit in that thinking process is I don't want, which is a kind of aversion, or I want, which is also a kind of aversion, because you want this, so you don't like the fact that you
don't have it
at the moment because you don't have that thing. And so, first of all, in meditation, we learn to put down that conceptual mind. And most of us are scared stiff, because when we think we put it down, we think, well, we're putting down ourselves. But the amazing thing is, in meditation, you realize, my God, there is something else there that is not the conceptual mind. And people label it, various people, and it's a good thing. And so some people label it God, and some people label it the higher self, and some people have all different labels for it, the universe, awareness, whatever. So that's the one key. Then the second key, the second sort of understanding is, well, if the conceptual mind is a part of me, then I can use the conceptual mind, but understanding that using it is illusory. Because we cannot live without using our conceptual mind, like everything we do, getting food, relating to people, communicating, it's all done with the conceptual mind. So we have to use it. So in meditation, we can only put it down for a short period of time, half an hour to an hour or whatever. Eventually, we have to take up the conceptual mind and use it again. and then we suffer again. And some people learn, okay, well, in that case, the answer is to go away into a cave and really never try to use the conceptual mind ever again, or at least as possible. But that's not really a very good solution. Then the Buddha came along and said, well, all you have to do is understand that the conceptual mind is illusory. And if you understand that, you can use the conceptual mind, and when it wants, you're not affected because you know wanting is an illusion. And so a truly awakened person can actually use their conceptual mind, but they're not fooled into what their conceptual mind is trying to tell them.
Yeah, that helps. That's I feel like that's been helpful. Yep. Yeah.
And as a result, we abide in a state which, like I said, happens to be incredibly happy, peaceful, which is a good state to be in. And so, you know, if dropping the conceptual mind meant that we went into a negative state or even just a non-state, well, what's the point of getting enlightened? But the fact is we can actually be in a good state, and it can affect the conceptual mind so that we become more clear and better able to help others. And as a result, we go what the Buddha says, we go beyond suffering. So we become impervious to any type of suffering, which is at the end of the day what everyone's trying to get away from.
Sure. I guess often when I'm thinking through this journey, it's very focused on the self's not the right word maybe, but I start, you know, I get concerned about the as you said, if I drop the conceptual mind, then who am I?
Correct.
And that feels frightening. It also feels very isolating.
Correct.
Like, so is it still want to have a life that you are engaged with others?
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm not sure how those two intersect with each other.
Well, they are the illusions of the conceptual mind. And, you know, I mean, I don't want to push anyone into
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
I'm not saying this to try to push you.
No.
But it's the conceptual mind that tells you that, because quite frankly, the ego, when I basically, and I'm going into this actually next week, is our job is to get rid of the ego. And the ego says, no, but I am me. And I'm scared stiff of being annihilated. And so you just have to, and so if you're on this journey, you have to trust, you just have to trust that it's the right journey. And if you don't trust it, then you won't go on the journey. And that's fine. You don't, no one's forced to go on this journey. But if you happen to, if it seems to resonate with you, and if you trust others who say, well, I've been on the journey, I've arrived, and bloody hell, it's a good place to be. Like once you get here, you will not want to go back. I can guarantee that. Then if you trust them, you'll go, well, I'll go on that journey because I trust you that at the end, dropping this, and it's not like it's a big thing. Like it can be a gradual thing where you drop it and then you feel so much better. And so because you dropped a little bit of ego and you feel better, then you have more trust. You go, well, that seemed to work. I think I'm going to drop more bits of ego.
Yeah, and can I just add to that? Just a question, Michelle, in terms of you know, we say that, and look, I think a lot of people, myself included, we, you know, it's hard to let go of the concept of self. But then the question that was asked to me was, you know, it's so hard to let go of that concept of self. But if we have that, you know, if there really is a, you know, a me, I, or a soul, then why is it not? Why do we suffer? As in, why do we have moments of suffering? If it was all, if everything was within our control and there really was a I, would we let ourselves suffer? Or is it, or on the other side, is it just simply a matter of, maybe there isn't an I or a soul, and things just are. So that was the question that was asked to me, and that sort of yeah.
The other thing
Yeah.
is, generally the mind isn't clear enough to actually see reality until about stage 6 or 7. So you can still get an enormous amount of benefit out of meditation in this case by going up to stage 4 or 5. And if you feel like, no, I want to stay with my deluded world, then you're welcome to kind of stay there, and you'll still have a lot of benefit, going up to those stages.
Sure.
And if, and my guess is by that time you'll be more confident.
Yeah,
You'll say, no, I
that's
want to
right.
see the truth now. But you can, like, to sort of get ourselves going, you can say, well, I don't want to know what the truth is. I just want to, but I do want to live better. And so I'm happy to study meditation to a certain level. So you can just take it a step at a time. Yeah, I mean, you can, I was going to say you can always step back, but actually if you have an insight into the way things really are, it is actually difficult to step back from that.
But as you say, if it's happened, you probably won't have the same aversion that you have at the moment.
Well, if you're with a good teacher and they prepare you, you won't. But if you stumble across this without someone to support you, it can be very confronting.
All right.
It's called what's called the dark night of the soul.
Yeah. Okay. That right.
In Christian tradition. So it's confronting. But for me, like, my own personal view is, hey, I only live once. I really want to know the truth. Like, I do believe that we're in delusion, and I really want to know. And I've been fortunate enough to have had some experiences which, anyway, good question. Nigel, you did have a question and then you put your hand down.
Yeah.
It was clear by Jim. You were talking about conceptual mind, because I'm used to Bob Proctor. He talks about the conscious and the subconscious mind. And when you mentioned ego, and that put it all into place then. So I knew what you were talking about. It's the ego that craves. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, it was just a clarity, which was explained by Michelle and yourself later. So thanks.
Yeah, well, I divide it up into awareness and then the mind, and then the mind is divided into the conscious and unconscious.
Yeah. Thank you.
And the mind is illusionary.
Well, the mind is what creates the illusion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, you could even say the mind is illusory ultimately as well, but it's definitely what creates the illusion. So we've got some other people, Doug, I know, and Amanda and Mona. How did you guys fare with that? Did you, was it what you foresaw? Kathy, I'm welcoming anyone else to say hi.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, Mona. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, it's actually quite new for me, Peter. So I was kind of listening and understanding and visualizing what it is. So yeah, you have mentioned about 10 stages. To be honest, I totally didn't get everything, but slowly, maybe I'll understand those things.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm hoping to do also is, so You know, one of the things that I'm running is a 2-year mentoring program, and some of you might resonate and decide to want to do that. But I realize that some of you might think, you know, I don't want to do that. That's not what I want to do. So I want to be able to give you pointers on where to go, for example, like the book The Mind Illuminated, which you can buy yourself and you
Yeah.
can work with yourself as well. So that at the end of this 5 weeks, you also have some resources to go deeper, because obviously each one of these subjects is a massive subject that will take weeks and months to sort of talk about in detail. I'm just introducing them as keys. You ought to study all of these 5 keys, because all of them hold a lot of potential to help you in the journey and how they fit together.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. That still, thank you very much. Like, it was a very interesting talk. I really enjoyed it.
No worries. All right. Well, with that, we have Kylie, last question, because we've reached our time. So last question, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah,
Kylie.
Peter, this is probably nothing to do with what we're doing tonight, but Ellie and I, after coming back from Bali, have had really interesting couple of weeks. And I'm not sure whether it's to do with all our meditation and lifting that vibration that little bit higher, but we've actually noticed a lot of, I guess you could call it negativity since we've come back, a lot of heaviness around our town, like in the people that are coming into our business and things like that. Have you had, or is this something that's usual to expect?
So one of the things that happens is, again, the short answer is I'm not sure, but one of the things that does happen to people is, and again, I believe that the mind and the body are reflections of each other. So if you have a healthy mind, it'll help you think better and think straighter. Now, when you do meditation and NLP work, you change the way you think, and I believe that actually will change the actual physical manifestation of your body. So things in your body will change. So often after processes like that, I say sometimes you'll go through a process of integration where the body is changing to match the structure of the mind. Because if you have a massive belief, that is often held in the body in some location, for example. It's just one example. And when the belief has changed, then often you'll have that thing where you held it in the body will start to dissipate. So certainly, if you were to say that that's what I thought you were going to say, is we've experienced strange things, and I thought, oh, that's just integration. In terms of the outside world, look, so it's very, very true that strange things happen during a spiritual journey. People talk about synchronicity of the universe and the manifestation principle. And I believe those things happen. And at the same time, I've always taken the attitude, supported by pretty much all teachers that I've ever met, to say, just effectively ignore them, and you just don't get distracted off of your track. Your track is, no matter what happens, you have to stay calm, equanimous, and compassionate and loving towards all beings. And so whether you think you're being guided by angels, or whether you think the devils have come out to stand in your way and they're providing, you've being given difficult conditions to work through, doesn't matter. You just keep going. Do you know what I mean? You just go, well, whatever is, maybe it's true. possibly it is true that the changes in your mind have an effect on the universe around you. But irrespective of whether it's true or not, the advice is the same. Just just take it as, it's all illusory anyway. So just take it as, well, whatever it is, whether it's devils or not, you're not going to persuade me from my aim, which is to keep maintaining equanimity, tranquility, happiness, and being of service to others with an attitude of, compassion, joy, kindness, that sort of thing.
Yes.
So,
That's good.
the short answer is I don't know, but it shouldn't distract you in your direction, no matter what happens.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it is interesting, I must admit.
Oh,
Interesting
it's been
stuff.
an interesting couple of weeks. It's
Yeah.
there's been a lot of processing, absolutely, for both of us.
Yeah.
I believe. And I've always been aware in past trainings that you come back and you can feel the changes. And obviously you are processing information as well. So I had the expectation of that, but it's been a really bizarre couple of weeks. And it's great to have Ellie sort of there so that we could actually confer with each other and go, wow, this is different.
Yeah.
And it is. It's interesting to we're maintaining where we are and what our outlook is. So it's great. Yeah, but we just thought it'd be interesting to see I was curious to see what your insights were on it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hear these kinds of stories all the time. And I've just come to the recognition of just be interested in them, but don't pay too much heed. And I always advise people, look, irrespective of what happens, just keep going.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Right, we'll
Thanks,
leave it
Peter.
there. I will stop the recording.